Now on this video, I'm going to recover two motorcycle seats. Each one is a little bit different. One has batting, one does not have batting. To keep the video from getting too long, and I know sometimes the videos do get long because I try never to leave out steps. So what I did, I put some of the video in fast forward, some in regular time. That should keep the video down. But I want to get across all the information, every trick that I know, every step, so that you can make a motorcycle seat look brand new for about 20 bucks. And some of the very, very simple things are, you need stretchable vinyl. That's the first one. To use heavy-duty staples. Have a helper if possible. And some wire cutters or needle nose pliers to pull out the staples. And again, marine vinyl tends to be too stiff. I've heard several comments on the videos about that. You need an old hairdryer to warm the material, or a heat lamp. Some people like to use a heat lamp. And this is a project that I think, and I'm really being honest about this, we do some high-tech stuff in the shop, polishing, carbon fiber stuff, making parts from scratch, that painting motorcycle wheels. That stuff is high-tech. It takes equipment. It takes some high skill level to do it. And by the way, you can watch this in 4K. But this is a project, it's very easy to do. This is something I think somebody could do as an entry-level thing, that the first time you do it, maybe take 2 hours instead of 1 hour. But I think in the end, if you tough it out and watch the whole video, by the end of it, you really will be able to cover a typical motorcycle seat without a lot of problems. And for under 20 bucks, it'll add a lot of value and a lot of satisfaction to your bike. Now, some of the seats, like the Ducati seats that we've done, we've had issues with the rubber being out of shape, and we've sanded and carved and done other things. Normally, I've done several of these seats already. They're pretty common. It's very difficult to get this area here not to wrinkle. This part is, not impossible, but it's tricky. And in the back to get this nice edge. But again, batting would make this a little bit nicer. Steve chose not to go with batting. And, well, we're going to see how it comes out. Maybe it'll come out fine anyway. So step one is you need some vinyl material to make a cover. There are two types of vinyl if you buy it off the internet. Vinyl that is made not to stretch, and there is vinyl that on purpose it's made with an X-weave pattern, so it stretches in pretty much all dimensions. Now this we bought from, well, Steve bought it, but I bought it also from Joanne Fabric. They have a lot of choices of colors. In fact, one of the things we've been thinking about doing is doing a custom seat for our green Kawasaki. May or may not happen. But again, the most important thing, step one, is get the vinyl that stretches in all dimensions. Now, the vinyl is typically $10 to $20 a yard. If you buy a yard, you usually can get more than one seat out of it, depending, especially like the small Ducati seats, you can get more. But the first thing is to stretch out, send out the material, lay it out, and you've got to cut a piece with plenty extra. And this is what I wanted to step one here, because I'm trying to make this easy for an average person. This is not a high-tech thing. And even if you don't have perfect results, you can always go back and redo the staples, and I'm going to show that. So the first thing is to take our vinyl material, and where's the seat? Holy right, we lost the seat. You think I would edit that out? Not a chance. Okay, so we don't want to lay the seat this way. We want to lay it this way. Now, I want to be sure, you can see why, that when I pull this up in all dimensions, I want to have plenty of material so that I have a handle to do the stretching. Now, see, if I did that, I'm in big trouble. So I want to have at least that amount of material, at least that amount. Back doesn't matter, we've got plenty. Here we've got plenty, so I can take basically a pen here, mark. In fact, because this is such a big seat, it looks like we're only going to get maybe one seat out of this. I don't know. So we'll take that out. And now the other thing it's nice and handy to have if you have a pair of relatively sharp scissors to cut the vinyl. So what I did, I turned this a little bit to the angle. We've got plenty. I want to just check, because once you start this process, you can't go back and add an inch. You can always trim an inch off. But now, it turns out if you do this sometimes with the long seats, you can get, if you buy the wide vinyl, you can get two. Sometimes you can get two out of the smaller. They come in two different widths sometimes. But anyway, Joann Fabric has plenty of choices. But the first step, it's a real simple thing. When you get the vinyl, a lot of times I've tried to do this on an angle, thinking that the X pattern would give me, and there are sometimes you can get a different curve if you put the material on a diagonal. But for all practical purposes, to make it as straightforward, this is not this is really upholstery 101. And to just lay it out, make sure you have enough material. And now the next thing is I have to go get my stapler and some 3/8 and 1/4 inch staples. Now sometimes the 3/8 staples are fine. Sometimes you need 1/4 inch. Sometimes they don't go in, depending on how. When this material gets old, it gets rock hard. Sometimes the staples don't want to go in. It's always better to have the choices 3/8 and 1/4 inch. The other thing, they make staples that are heavy duty. You want heavy duty staples, not regular staples. Now, in doing upholstery work and restoration work on furniture, I did some furniture work for Art Conklin. I remember that we used all different staples. Anyway, the whole point was, here's the main thing. I need some different size, some 1/4 inch, some 3/8, some half. I always have some half just in case. But here's what the main thing is. Somewhere on it, it has to say heavy duty. If it doesn't say heavy duty, they're not going to, it's just not as good. It's worth paying the extra, whatever, 50 cents per pack. One box will do a bunch of seats anyway. And you need this is just an ordinary typical hand stapler. I do have a power stapler. I just haven't found it useful at all. It's a lot easier for me, because I'm old and decrepit, to just use an ordinary hand stapler. I always like to start at one end just to get this roughly in place. We're just putting the rough shape on this. Now I'll see if these staples are going to work fine. Usually you got to press down with your second hand. Real handy, by the way, if you have a helper doing this. It doesn't mean you can't do it without a helper, though. So, and if the helper is going to, he can help you hold it in place. So what we basically have, step one, we've got this tacked into position. Now what I'm going to do is just carefully, without making too much of a thing to do here, I can trim some of this away, just to make this easier to make the bend. And we're going to constantly be trimming and throwing these little pieces away. Because what I want to do, I want to get this piece up just roughly in position here. It's going to move 100 times. Now I've got to really get this piece in. If you can do it this way, of course it's a lot easier. Now, we have it, it's just really rough, super rough. Get a piece here. Now there's probably professional upholsterers, they would laugh at how I do this, but it's okay. At the end of the day, the job gets done. And they can probably do it a lot faster, but in the end, probably not a whole lot better. Okay, so we just have this, and that's the beginning step. We just have it roughed into position so it can't move around, and we have plenty of overage on all sides. That's the first part of getting the seat recovered. Now from this point on, I want to leave enough material, but I don't want to have so much that it's cumbersome. This is going to be enough. I can see already as I go along here, I can get rid of a little bit of the overage. I want to leave enough on that I can get like a little handle on this. Now, from this point on, this really isn't that complicated. But I want to take a piece here. Each time I do this, I'm going to stretch it just a little bit more. So because I don't have a helper, I've got to struggle a little bit here. And what I'm doing, I'll just get this. Everything is just tacked into position. And you can see little by little, I'm going to wind up having to take that wrinkle out. Well, that's not a big deal to do that. But before I do that, I want to make about, let's see, up to here, I want to make a little bit of a stretch on. So now what I'm doing, I'm stretching it I can use the nose of the stapler actually to do a little stretching. And what I've done is take a little bit of that material out. Now I can flip it around this way. Take a little bit of this material. These are not all of these staples eventually going to come out when we put the final staples in. These are just to rough it in. And the wrinkles don't mean anything. We can get them all out. Okay, so we've got this. Now we've got to work on this corner. Again, I'm trying to work from front to back. So now I can trim a little bit more of this. This will just make it a little bit easier. You'd like to have about 1 inch of material to work with. And you're constantly just cutting some back, cutting some back. This, again, just makes it a little bit easier. Now, anytime you have a wrinkle, you want to take the middle of the wrinkle, the absolute middle, and that's where you want to put the staple. In other words, I'm going to try to show this. I'm stretching it side by side and pulling it back. Go from the middle of the wrinkle on. So now you can see I've got half of that wrinkle, but there's still a little wrinkle here. Now I'm going to take that wrinkle, and I'm going to, the original staple came out, but I'm going to do this over and over. Just move that little stapler up. And we're going to do this several times. Each time we do it, we're going to be stretching it just a little bit more. Now I notice this one's not going to come out. So I've got to pull that staple out. I could just tell by looking at that, we have too much material there, and I don't want to take it out yet. But I'm going to take the middle of the wrinkle, pull it up, middle of the wrinkle, use the nose of the stapler to stretch it. This one is staple array. We may have to use longer staples, I don't know. It depends on how hard that material is. As time goes by, that material hardens up. Before we put any heat on this, I want to get that. And you just constantly here taking the old staples out, put the new staples in as this starts to conform. Now you can see we've got that corner done. Now obviously I'll do the other corner off camera, and then we'll start working our way forward. So at this point we have the back almost final stretch. Now what we'll do at the end is just with the nose of the stapler, take each staple out, push it in just a little more. But what this does, it lets all the wrinkles reside now in the inner lip, which is, and we just keep stretching it in with using the nose of the stapler and pushing it in, pushing it in, pushing it in. And what'll happen is, now we're gonna work from this point. We've got this point. Actually, it came out pretty nice. We're gonna see we've got a wrinkle up here. We're gonna work this wrinkle all the way, and then we wind up at the end. The end is the most difficult part to do, but little by little. The nice thing about this is it's a non-committal project. You can always go back and use the other cover even if you make a mess out of it. But it's I think it's reasonable to do, and I think if you watch any of these videos, not only mine, any of them, it's a relatively simple project for under $20. And what I want to do with the green bike is find the blue that matches. Kawasaki did make blue seats at some time, and see if they have that fabric. And it's a non-committal because I have 2 seats for the bike. Now here's where, at this point in time, I want this all to, I've got a wrinkle here. I want this to flow in that direction. So a lot of times it's easier to take one staple out. They come right out, of course. If they come out too easy, you use the next bigger size staple. Use the nose of the stapler, get one in there. Now I see I still have a little bit of a wrinkle. Again, I'm going to have to do this 1,000 times in the course of doing this, but now you can see what's happened. I've got that smooth, and I'm going to work my way right up to the front, constantly pulling this material up in this direction. So now we pretty much have the back the way we want it. I'm still right to the very end. I leave this extra material because anywhere I want to get a wrinkle out, when we start heating this, what's going to happen is I may develop a new wrinkle that isn't here now. Now see, here's what batting would do. Batting would make this just a little bit flatter, a little bit nicer. And again, but it's Steve's motorcycle, of course, and I'm not going to tell him how to customize bikes, but that would have made that a little bit nicer. And this looks like it's, hey, like it's coming along pretty good. We're pretty good here up to here. And now we're going to just work one side up, the other side, one side, the other side, and work our way right up to the front. And then the front, is the most challenging of all. Now this for sure is going to be a little challenging here. This is where you really do benefit from having a helper, but I want to just tack it roughly before I start to stretch it. Just rough it in. That'll hold that while I'm working on it. And then I'll go back one by one, take the staples out, and stretch it just a little bit more. Now see, there's a little wrinkle here I can get rid of. We got a piece in the way, so I have to work on each side of it, rather than I can't really get that piece out of there. And now we're going to have to start working that curve. We're going to have to start pulling that down. Now I'm going to have one side tacked. I'm going to tack the other side off camera. Now every time we do this, I'm going to look for this wrinkle. I want to make, wherever I see a wrinkle, I want to make it, pull it in exactly the opposite direction. So just when we're still in the rough stage, we haven't gotten the wrinkles out yet. I see a wrinkle this way, it means I've got to pull this way. I see this wrinkle going this way, I've got to take the staples out, pull it this way. And I have to go back and forth many times now until I get basically a good amount of those wrinkles out. Now just to hold the front in position while I do some more stretching, I can get rid of some of this extra material, but this is all going to change. I'm just going to have to keep, when we actually start using heat this and pull this back. But right now I only need one staple in each little piece. So now we have the front tacked in, the back pretty much tacked in, and we've got to get this wrinkle out. Well, if there's a certain types of material, a thin vinyl, you can just pull this like it's rubber. This is nice heavy material. This is really nice stuff. So what I'm going to do, I can do a hairdryer or a heat gun. If I use a heat gun, you got to be real careful. I'm going to warm this material, then take out the staples and just start. Imagine I'm always going against the wrinkle. In other words, when I pull this, I don't want to pull here. I want to pull this wrinkle this way, this wrinkle this way, and just keep stretching it. Go do the other side, come back, go back, and at some point, we'll little by little see that wrinkle start to disappear, and then we'll have to do the nose section. The back is already done, back is happy, and we're just going to have to, this is going to take time. Okay, so it's time, we got to get these big wrinkles out. We're going to start by warming the vinyl. Again, if you use a heat gun, you can burn the vinyl. This is a little more forgiving if you're doing your first seat. Might want to think about just doing it with a hairdryer. Even better, if you live in a warm weather climate, put the seat just like it is now out on the hood of your car on the dashboard and let it cook. The heat, right now, heat is your friend. Now this is where it's tricky when you're doing this alone. And of course in my shop, I always try to plan a way of doing everything alone. I don't have a live-in helper here. Now I'm getting that wrinkle. You can see I've got it out. Now I've got to spin this back. A little more difficult than it looks. Stretch it with the nose of the gun. Stretch it. Stretch it. This is only temporary. And I've got more of it out now. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Pull that side. And you can see what's going to happen as I stretch this. When the material is warm, it's going to start to conform. And I've got to go back and forth, back and forth. But little by little, we're going to get all those wrinkles out. Okay, I thought I'd show this in stages. We're down to the last little bit. And again, if I heat this, or if I lived in a sunny weather climate, I have this because it's black, it'll turn into a solar panel. Out in the backyard, I've done these with no heat at all. Just pull them and stretch them and use the natural sun. Save the planet. Okay, we're starting to get there. Patience, heat, and always work one side, the other side, one side, the other side. Now as I'm doing this, because I'm stretching the material, I've developed some wrinkles in the back. No big deal. We're going to just pull the staples out there at the very end, because then at the end we're going to put staples, new staples around the whole edge and then pull out the old ones. No problem at all. So far, so good. You just can't try to rush the system. The system is you got to work it and work that vinyl back and forth. Heat it, work it, heat it, staple it, stretch it. And when you're done, the results speak for themselves. This when you have an old ratty seat on a bike with a hole in it or a rip, and you can do this for 20 bucks and do it yourself and take pride in it, it's a good project. So now, as we come to the hard part here is going to be the nose. I see I still have a little bit of a wrinkle in here, and this is where batting helps. The batting would cover some of that up, would just make it stretch easier. But I still have a little bit of a wrinkle here, so I thought I'd show one of these in real time. And there's really no high-tech stuff here. It's the whole theory of you pull against the wrinkle 90 degrees, and you just keep doing it and heating it and doing it and eventually it works. Now, I see I have that. If I just pull here, I want to show this trick. If I just pull here, it's like pushing a car with a banana. You gotta get this material here to stretch. So I've got to reach in. I've got to pull it from inside. And you can see I've got more of that. Now, when I've got more of it, I need to take some heat. Now I'm putting some heat into it. If I were doing this every day, I'd use a heat gun because I'd have more confidence. But because I have very low confidence, I don't do it every day. Maybe 2 or 3 times a year we do this for somebody. But you get a lot of satisfaction out of a project like this because you can bring a bike into the shop and in an hour, 2 hours the latest, it can look really good. Now it's stretchable. I can grab that. It's a lot more flexible. I can bend it around. Again, here's where it would be neat to have a helper. But it's always good, I've found, to be able to gauge all your work, even when you're doing something complicated that you don't depend on anybody except your own 2 little hands. Okay, we got 90% of it out now. There's a little bit more, but you can see little by little, we're coming up on it. Now I've got to do the same thing, and I've got to do it over and over and over until I get the stretch I want. And then the last thing is to get these corners just right. Now a good tip, you can bite yourself in the behind right here, is when you have if you start to trim this material too small. I left it oversized here until I get all the staples in. See, I want to have, if I got to trim this back eventually, but I want that material there. So if I see a wrinkle, I can take a couple staples out and just pull that back. So at this point, the cover is totally stretched on, but that's only a temporary thing. Now, if you were to just run out, put this on a motorcycle, yeah, you could do that, I'm sure. But we do a couple extra little things, and especially for good friends like Turbo Steve. Well, now the last thing is, I'm going to put a row of staples around the whole perimeter here. I can even pull this down. I want to go right around as many as possible, even put a couple extra in. It doesn't have to look pretty. It's got to not pop out. And we wound up at the end of this using all 3/8 staples, just because this material was pretty hard. 30-year-old part, 25-year-old part, whatever it is. But I'll put those extra staples in. I don't need to do that on camera. Trim a little bit of this back with a razor blade, and I think when we were done with that, I think anybody, that's for all purposes a brand new seat. Now again, I think that really came out pretty nice. I'm sure Steve will love it. But anyway, now as I put these staples in, this is just a little, I don't know, a little trick. I put this up against the mirror here. Take the staple gun, and I can start at one end, and I can just put a little bit of a stretch on every staple. The back side of this doesn't have to look pretty, but those extra staples, as time goes by and you do your track days or whatever you do, or I'm not sure. Most of my friends, you know, you do really ride the bike. That's the purpose of doing this. But I really want to make sure I have plenty of staples around here. I don't want to, at some point in time, but a little bit of extra effort this is going to take. Now, there's one other thing that's worth mentioning. If you take this right now and put this out on the hood, before you even do anything with it, put it out on the hood of the car, again, a couple hours. What happens, the vinyl is self-conforming. It'll mold to its own shape here. And even though we didn't use batting on this, this really did come out pretty good. I may have to double the price. So the last part of this job is I have to check with my quality control inspector, who just happened to be walking by. Karen!
Yeah?
How do you like Steve's seat?
Really nice.
What do you think?
I like it a lot.
All right. All right, Steve, it's for you. Come pick it up. Hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching. An old motorcycle seat to like new or even better than new condition. Something we do in the shop all the time, and I have several seats to show as demos on this video. It's a relatively simple, straightforward job. You don't need a lot of expensive tools. First tool you need is a wire cutter type of tool to pull out all the old staples, take out all the old hardware, of course, and of course get the old cover off so you can see what you're dealing with right away. Now, getting those old staples out sometimes can be a lot harder when they're rusted in than you think, and you don't want to leave half of the staple in there because it's a little razor blade while you're working on the project later in the project. It's a good idea to get them all out, and it can be time consuming because some of them, in this case, we're working on a 250 Ninja seat that's about 20 years old, I believe, and some of them are rusted in there pretty well. Now you're going to need some batting or not have the batting. If the seat is in relatively good shape, the foam, you don't need batting. In this case, we needed batting. Batting comes in different thicknesses. You can buy all of this stuff at Jo-Ann Fabric or on the internet. And it comes in various thicknesses, relatively inexpensive. Enough to do 4 or 5 motorcycle seats is about $10. So you want to have some batting if the foam is in rough shape. That'll smooth it out. It'll tend to make it look real nice. You need a can of spray adhesive. Not important what brand it is. It's only going to do a little temporary tack the job in place as you're working on it. In this case, we used Elmer's. Again, all this stuff is available from Jo-Ann Fabric or any craft store like Michael's. And we usually have some stores like that pretty close to our neighborhood. We want to lay the batting on. And now because of the contact cement, it's going to kind of conform. When we're all done, we want to trim off the extra. Again, this is relatively straightforward stuff here. Nothing here, the thing to keep in mind, nothing here really difficult or really out of the skill set of an average backyard mechanic. Now, once I flip that over, I trim off the extra. I have a piece of the material. Vinyl comes in stretch vinyl and no stretch vinyl. You want the kind that stretches. And the kind that stretches, if you heat it, it gets very, very flexible. And it's very, very easy to learn the technique. If you're not familiar with using stretch vinyl, it can be intimidating in the beginning. But again, give yourself a little credit and a little time. All of the tricks that you need to know are on this video. You need an arrow type stapler, a very inexpensive tool, and heavy duty staples. Usually 3/8 and 1/4 will be fine. And you won't know until you go to staple it in which staples are going to work the best for you. Now, it's always a good idea to work in a warm, sharp environment or warm the vinyl up. In this case, we've got about a 70-degree temperature in the shop. Tack it in on one side, and the first part of this is pretty easy. Pull the other side over, and you can trim it before or after. It doesn't really matter. But you want to get it stretched from side to side. Trimming it relatively easy. Again, no part of this is rocket science. And you want to always, each time you do this, put a little stretch on it. Put a little stretch. Push the nose of the stapler up into the part. As you do this, you'll get a feel for how this material is going to stretch. Right about now, at this point in the job, you're starting to think, oh, I'll never get those wrinkles out. Oh my God, because if this is the first time you've done this, it can be intimidating. Now, you want to get as much of the material off as you don't need because extra material just gets in your way, but don't make it so small you can't pull on the ends. Things that always help at this point in the job is keeping the vinyl warm, and you can constantly hit it with your heat gun or in any way, work in a warmer environment, work outside in the sunshine. Anything that makes the vinyl warmer is going to make it easier to stretch. It's okay to stretch it over and over and over. Now, what makes people think, oh, I got a wrinkle there, oh, I'll never get it out. It's not true. You've got to work this back and forth over and over and over. Keep stretching it, moving the staples, stretching it, moving the staples, stretching it. And once you do that and you see how you can get the wrinkles out. Now that wrinkle, if I were to take the wrinkle from exactly the opposite point to point
and go in the opposite direction, little by little, that wrinkle is going to come out. And if I heat it, it's going to come out even a little sooner. But it's a back and forth thing, back and forth. You've got to go exactly the opposite of the wrinkle. If it's going from front to back, you pull it sideways. Exactly the opposite. And once you see, little by little, it's coming out. Look at that. And little by little, and little by little, keep taking the staples out. Take the nose of the stapler and stretch it. Take the staples out, take 2 or 3 out at a time, stretch it. 2 or 3 out at a time, stretch it. And always go against the wrinkle, exactly the opposite of the wrinkle. We'll get that wrinkle out, and little by little, and once you've seen that you can do this, boy, this changes everything. And now, and anybody that's been in the shop and seen how I've done it, and I'm certainly not a rocket scientist about this, but I can do it well enough that I've restored many, many motorcycle seats. And you can buy these covers that are pre-fit, but they're pricey. The material is about $10 to $15 for enough to do 2 or 3 motorcycle seats. All of the tools, you just keep stretching it. Tools are inexpensive. And the thing is, if you buy a yard of fabric and you screw up the first one or wrinkle it or rip it or whatever, just start over again. This whole job should take about an hour. And the second or the third time you do it, even sooner. If you have a helper, see now what I'm doing, I'm pushing the nose of the stapler right up against and stretching it all around the whole perimeter, stretching it like you do a canvas for a piece of artwork. And take out a few staples, take out a few, 4, 5, 6, how many, and get the stapler out and just put the nose of that stapler, heat it up a little where you want the wrinkle to go away. The heat, this is a heat gun, but you can use a hair dryer too. And now take the nose of the stapler, put some tension on it, press it in. Right away, right here is where it's really nice if you have a helper or somebody that can help you. But what's going to happen is little by little by little, and you need to be patient. The heat helps it. And when you think you've got all the wrinkles out, what's a good idea? Go put it on the dashboard of your car on a bright sunny day, because the heat will let the whole seat, it'll be heated all at once, and it'll conform to that shape, and a lot of the little wrinkles will go away by themselves. And so here we are, we got up to this point now. It's been sitting for about a half an hour, and I'm still putting more staples in it. I want to put, now I'll call these the final staples. Once I get the final staples in, I know the wrinkles are all out. Now I can take my little hammer, or you can take the end of a pair of pliers even, and just push the staples down so that while you're working on a motorcycle or working around the motorcycle, you don't catch a sharp edge from a staple. Just put a final little touch on the job. Then you can also trim off the last little bit of the vinyl. You can hammer those staples down. Now, the seats, this type of seat is the most difficult up in the front. The easiest is in the back. You can do the back as a practice. Save the front for the final. But again, this whole job should cost between $10 and $20. And a new seat or seat cover can be over $100. And you can do this yourself in about an hour. Even if you have to do it twice, it'll be very satisfying when you get the first one done. It's very satisfying.
So I'm hoping now that if you've got this far, you'll be able to recover your own motorcycle seat. And thank you to everybody who leaves nice comments on the videos. I appreciate them all, of course. And if there's ever a question you have, leave it in the comments section. I try to do these videos, make them informative and fun to watch, and hope you enjoyed watching this one. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please hit the like button if you did, and thank you so much for watching.